Eddie Muller here, welcoming you to my dark corner of the TCM universe. I have eagerly awaited this day ever since I began hosting Noir Alley more than 5 years ago. That's because today you are going to witness one of the most obscure and bizarre movies of the original noir era. From Monogram Pictures in 1946, it's Decoy. What could have been a pedestrian crime programmer turns out to be something quite unique due to an unexpected injection of weird science and the ultimate badass portrayal of a cold-blooded femme fatale. There's a lot to unpack with this one, so I'm going to begin with how the film came to be rediscovered more than 20 years ago. I had just started programming noir festivals with the American Cinematheque in Hollywood. The greatest thing about that gig was burrowing into studio vaults in search of films I'd only heard about. While film scholars knew all about the 1945 crime film Detour, featuring Anne Savage as one of the meanest women in movie history, Decoy, starring little-known British actress Jean Gilly, was completely unknown, having rarely been seen on movie screens since its original release. When we learned of a never-projected 35mm print in the Warner Brothers archive, it was high time to shine some light through it. An unsuspecting audience was not prepared for what hit the screen that night. A totally berserk plot, wild tonal swings between brutality and pitch-black humor, and the ice-cold ferocity of star Jean Gilly. Freed from the depths of obscurity, she immediately soared into the pantheon of the genre's great bad girls. Word of mouth spread fast, and Decoy zoomed from near oblivion to cult classic status. All of which was tremendously amusing to the guy who wrote the crazy story on which this film is based. Stanley Rubin was an up-and-coming writer with aspirations to produce his own movies, which he'd eventually do quite successfully for many decades. But prior to his World War II service, Stanley was mostly writing B pictures, things like Burma Convoy and Bombay Clipper. After leaving the Air Corps, Rubin wrote Decoy as a radio play. He'd been inspired by research of a chemical called methylene blue, which in the proper circumstances can counteract cyanide poisoning. Rubin added some creative exaggeration to the power of methylene blue, giving his story an utterly outrageous twist. Don't worry, I'm not going to spoil it. You'll see for yourself soon enough. Rubin sold his story to Monogram Pictures, where the final script was written by Nedrick Young, an actor trying his luck at screenwriting for the first time. Noir fans know Ned Young from roles in a couple of classics, Gun Crazy and Crime Wave. Despite being blacklisted in the early 50s, Young's writing career peaked later that decade, when under an assumed name, he co-wrote two big hits, The Defiant Ones and Inherit the Wind, both of which earned him Academy Award nominations. He won the Best Screenplay Oscar for The Defiant Ones. Now, if Decoy were to win any prizes, they'd all go to Jean Gilly, making her American movie debut as Margot Shelby, inarguably the most cold-hearted dame in the history of crime movies. Typically, femme fatales are given at least one scene where they reveal a humanizing soft spot beneath the sexy armor. You will find no soft spots in Margot. She is as cold as they come. Interesting to note that the director of Decoy, Jack Bernhardt, was married to Jean Gilly. They'd met while he was a fighter pilot serving with the Royal Air Force in World War II. Gilly was 30 years old, developing a nice career for herself in England when she married the decorated flyer. Bernhardt's father was a vice president at Warner Brothers. Prior to the war, Jack Bernhardt had written and produced a few B pictures at Universal. I'm sure her husband's connections helped inspire Gilly to take a crack at Hollywood. So in 1945, she came stateside with her groom, who was determined to stake a claim in the post-war movie business and make his wife a star. This was her introduction to American audiences. Safe to say, they'd never seen anything like her. As my colleague Glenn Erickson has noted, if Quentin Tarantino had made Pulp Fiction in the 1940s, it would look and feel a lot like what you're about to see. From 1946, in all its grungy and absurd grandeur, here is Decoy.